Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the show. This is Sports with Strawberry Ice. I'm your host, the Iceman, Jeff Tronopole. And as always, I bring you sports from a West Side point of view right here in the great city of Cincinnati, Ohio, home of the original professional baseball team, the Cincinnati Reds. Now, do me a favor, if you found the show, hit that like and subscribe button. Smash that thumbs up. You guys are awesome. I'm up to 2,442 subscribers. As always, I appreciate every single one of you guys. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter X and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, why not? Please do so. Please go to the YouTube channel Sports with Strawberry Ice. Hit the subscription button, hit the bell for notification. Every time I go live, you'll be notified. Now, it used to be, I'd tell you to go give me a super chat, but if you saw yesterday's show, I got demonetized. So you can't give me a super chat, but you could go and message YouTube and protest and find out why I got demonetized, because I still don't know. I haven't appealed it yet. I'm trying to find out what I did wrong first so I know what I'm appealing. But anyway, that's where we're at. But as always, I'm coming to you live from this glorious place down there. It's the Ice Cave. And the Ice Cave is brought to you by T Properties. T Properties, quality housing for quality people. Check out the website at www.tpropertiesllc.com for all your rental property management needs and your rental needs. So if you have, or if you're looking at an apartment, looking for a condo, looking for a house to rent, check out T Properties. They have it all on their list or on the website there. If you have a rental property that you just don't want to manage anymore, you don't want the headaches of people not paying rent and doing the maintenance and yada, 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 and all that stuff, give T Properties a shot. They will take care of the rest. And, we're talking Reds today, but, we still hit the jackpot when we drafted Joe Burrow. Even though Jackpot Browning played really well last night, there's only one jackpot, and his name is Joe Burrow. If you guys want any of the gear, I'm not wearing it today because I got Bengal stuff on, but we have flags, we got hats, we got shirts. It's at jackpotjoey9.com if you want any of the delicious beer that you see all around the studio here. It is by Brick Brewery. You can get it there at their brewery there in North College Hill. Also, it's at pretty much every major Kroger, all in Dayton. I don't think it's in Kentucky yet, but it's pretty much everywhere. So make sure you have some delicious award-winning beer. You can drink that, and you can wear some cool stuff. And remember, portions of the proceeds go to the Joe Burrow Foundation. And that's what this is all about. It's about helping people out. Not about a name, not about a brand or anything. So you get to drink some cool beer, wear some cool stuff, and you help people out. What's up to everybody in the chat? Oh, I didn't put that up there. There you go, jackpotjoey9.com. What's up to everybody in the chat? It's early. I'm surprised you guys are there. Strangers there first. Robert, my boy Chandler. How in the world did you get home so fast? He literally just left my house. He must have texted that before he drove. Anyway, Chris Welsh is not here yet. He just called me. He's on his way back from the golf course. So I'll sit here and chat with you guys for a little bit till I see Chris in the waiting room. Let's get to some of the comments here. Robert, go Reds. What's good? Great W last night. Looking forward to the Red season and seeing how our Bengals finish their season. Who Day for life? Go Reds. Exactly. We can talk a little bit of the game last night. I don't want to talk too much about it because we're going to talk today live at 5:30. I have Corey Dillon. I don't think Cap's going to be on because he's in Florida. He went to the game last night. Unless he's got time to jump on, if he's in the airport or not. But Big Sandwich will be on. But yeah, last night was awesome. It was really cool watching Jake Browning. And he got called Jackpot Browning on ESPN, which is pretty cool. Burrow and them call him Jakey Spin Rate. So you call him whatever you'd like. Anyway, he is in the waiting room. I met him. He's a wonderful dude. We had an absolute blast this weekend. He is the crafty left-hander. He's Chris Welch. What's up, Chris? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you doing?
Good. Long time no see. We had a good time down there at Reds Fest this past weekend.
I think a lot of people had a good time down there. The vibe there was a lot of what I felt like last year at the stadium.
Yeah.
Where there are a lot of young people. They're kind of juiced up about the young players the Reds have. It looks like it's all optimistic and everything. It was fun. I mean, I had a great time, and people are all geeked up, and I'm pretty stoked about that.
I'm geeked up. This is the most excited I've been on a Reds offseason probably since 2020 when they signed everybody. We got two pitchers. We signed Emilio Pagan and we signed Nick Martinez. I don't think we're done yet, Chris. I mean, I think they're probably going to there's rumors out there about Shane Bieber, Glasnow from Tampa. I think we're going to try to get another outfielder? What's your thoughts on the potential moves that the Reds might make this offseason?
I think they're going to continue to try to do what they can. I do think, however, that they've figured out that if you don't get a top tier starting pitcher, why spend the money on any your secondary or your tertiary tier pitcher? These guys, even your top tier pitcher, take a look at Sonny Gray, for instance. The guy's a 5 or 6 inning pitcher at the most, 5 innings mostly. That's the average. 5.2 innings, I think, is what the average major league starter goes nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's not like signing a pitcher 15 years ago and you expected 9 or 10 complete games out of that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're spending way more money than you did 10 years ago because the cost of players is up. But these guys are pitching less than ever before. So I think the Reds have come to the conclusion, and I certainly buy into this as well, that if you don't get one of the top guys out there, stock up your bullpen because that's where you're going to need the arms. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Arizona Diamondbacks proved that as much as anybody is that, you got a couple of good starters and you got some other guys that can throw some breaking balls. And now you've got a bullpen that can hold them where they are. And that's where the Reds have to be. Then I think they've improved their bullpen a lot by signing, Pagan and Martinez.
Yeah, it's funny. Nobody pitches 7 innings or 8 innings anymore, or 9 innings. I mean, you were a good starter if you pitched 200 innings. Now we're lucky if we get you to pitch 150 innings. That's elite anymore in this day and age of baseball. Now I have a question for you. And with the new rules that came out, the pitch clock and everything, there's some talk which I don't buy into, to be honest. But some people are saying that the pitch clock sped guys up, and that's why the arms, or it seemed like the arm rate of people getting hurt this year was up. Do you buy into that at all?
Well, back in the 1950s and 60s and early 70s, when games were averaging less than 2.5 hours per game, you had starting pitchers going 300 innings.
Right.
So, no, I don't buy that. I think it's a bunch of BS. I think that it all comes down to effort level and analytics. Mm-hmm. And you can't deny that the fact that the guys are throwing harder now, they're bigger, stronger, they're better velocity, they're better athletes, they're finely tuned, their nutrition is better, they've got coaches in every different part of their game that make them better, stronger anyway. But they so you can't deny that. But the fact is that they wear out and they also blow out. Mm-hmm. And this is what the uncertainty of an ownership and general manager is that when I sign this guy, I'm going to my owner and I'm going to tell him, hey, this guy has been such and such a player throughout his career. And if he stays healthy, this is what he's going to give us. The problem is if he doesn't stay healthy, you still owe him a boatload of money. Right. And now you've got to find somebody else to pick up where he left off. And that's the uncertainty in signing free agents. And nowadays, it's even more than ever, especially when it comes to pitchers, because these pitchers, they come out there and they go, Powder River as hard as they can, the hardest slider they can throw, the hardest fastball they can throw. That's why they can only pitch 1 inning at a time, because they're full bore. Whereas back in the old man's day, like my day, even before that, we would save pitches the first time through the order so that the guy didn't see everything you had. And then the second time, then the third time, you'd break out something new on them. And you don't have to do that anymore because you've got relievers ready to go in the 5th and 6th inning. Third time through the order, you're turning it over to somebody else.
Right, exactly. Me and my son have had this conversation, and it's mostly concerning Hunter Green. And for me, you know more about pitching than I'll ever know, but I think Hunter Green, if he would try to concentrate more on location instead of throwing the ball 100 miles an hour every pitch, I think he'd actually be a better pitcher in that aspect. Is there any? Because I always go to Greg Maddux or Tom Browning. They never threw the ball. They could barely break a glass pane window with their fastballs, but they were successful pitchers. Is there? So everybody wants to throw it 100 miles an hour. Do you think it's ever going to go back to location more important than velocity?
Jeff, you're not old enough to be talking like that.
I'm 48. I'm almost 49. So yeah.
That's still not old enough. Because
what can I say?
here's the problem. I remember being on a road trip last year with the Reds, and Nick Kroll was on this road trip, and we were in LA, and I went to Dave Roberts, and Dave and I have known each other for a long time, and we're talking behind the Dodger batting cage during batting practice. I'm like, hey, what's going on with the pitching here, Dave? I mean, even you guys that can afford the best pitchers in baseball with your payroll, you're only going 5 innings. You bring a guy up in the minor leagues, he's 22 years old, he's throwing 98 miles an hour, easy gas, and you take him out after 5 innings. What's going on? He says, tell me about it. He goes, I'm so frustrated. I can't believe this. What's going on in our minor leagues? I say, well, and so I asked Nick Kroll that evening on the way back on the bus ride. And the next day he shows up with a spreadsheet that shows me the batting averages and the on-base percentage and OPS and so on of all the batters that faced the pitcher the third time through the order, and it skyrockets. So you can't argue with the fact that it's more efficient to bring a bullpen guy in the third time through the order who's throwing gas for 1 inning than it is to leave your starter in, because the statistics prove that.
Right,
and
right.
because of that, you're developing a whole group of pitchers that, you're 1 inning and that's all you can pitch. And if you pitch 2 days in a row, then you need a day off. So the days of actually learning how to pitch, changing speeds, getting guys out, you've got to have an organization that believes in that in order for you to get that opportunity, because otherwise the stats show that it's not going to work out.
There you go. Let's get to some of the comments here. This is my son, Chan. He got two. It's a long one here. He said, Chris, both as a former player and as someone who has better access to this team off camera than the rest of us, how big a difference would it make to this team's locker room dynamic by adding or taking away certain key players?
Big time. Yeah, the reason that the Diamondbacks, for instance, were where they were last year is because they played as a team.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give up. The Reds are the same way. I mean, they played as a team. Everybody's pulling in the right direction. I mean, it sounds like a corny concept.
Right.
And, you look at it and say, oh, come on, they had better players, Corbin Burns or whatever, Corbin Carroll. But the fact is that there is something to say for about guys pulling together and the energy of your dugout.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to put a fantasy team together. It's a lot harder to put a real team together that has to travel, be with each other every day, buy into the program, know that, there are certain players who are not going to play against certain pitchers and so on. They've got to accept that. That's where it gets tough, because you're blending the talent and the physicality of a player with the human side.
Right.
And you've got to be able to manage that. So, for instance, I think that it would be very advantageous for the Reds to find a Latin player of some experience and some stature to be a mentor and a role model for the young Latin players the Reds have coming up in their organization now. The Latin players in the Reds organization right now are everyday players. There aren't too many in the pitching area, but guys like Ellie De La Cruz and Noelvi Marte, and you go on down a list of all those young players that are kind of waiting in the wings in the minor leagues. It would really be helpful, I think. And I think the Reds have recognized that, and they're thinking about that. But the problem is, who do you get? Who do you displace in the process? And so, the devil's in the details, and I think that's where they are right now. But I think there's a lot to it. I mean, how the makeup of your team, we all judge players by wins, right?
Right.
Wins above average. And I think the one guy that can help that, and it's completely intangible, is somebody who can really help your young players along.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a void with Joey Votto not being around. I think that there is an opportunity because there's so many young players. They can't all be guided by coaches and manager. They got to have some veteran players in there as well. And I think that before it's all said and done, I think the Reds will probably do that.
Now, speaking of the biggest name that we keep hearing that possibly could be traded, but I think Nick Kroll kind of squashed this the other day, is Jonathan India. And that goes to your point that when Jonathan India was injured, the Reds kind of went through their swoon there. They didn't finish as strong as they had. And I think a lot of that had to do with Jonathan India's leadership. Now, the problem is where you're going to play him. Now, I heard that Nick Kroll said they potentially could be trying India at first base, as well as second base, because they're going to move guys around this year. And so, do you think? I mean, like I said, I think Nick Cross said yesterday that they're not going to trade India, or at least they have their plans of it. Do you think India will still be here next year because of his leadership on this team and how important he is to this team because of that? Because it is such a young team.
He brings you that intangible that it's really hard to put a finger on. I mean, all your analysts, and you got a whole boatload of analysts in the other room there, with their algorithms and
all those guys over there
breaking stuff down like that. It's never been broken down before.
Right.
They can't help you when it comes to that. This is something that, you've got to talk to the players about and talk to the manager about them. What does a guy like Jonathan India bring to the table as far as the leadership and the emotions and so on? And it's a very difficult thing to put your finger on. And I'm glad I don't have to make that decision because, you could think you're making the right decision. You could be completely wrong. I think the one thing that's working for Jonathan is that, hopefully he's willing to take a look at moving and playing other positions besides second base. Because let's be frank about it. I mean, Matt McClain is as good a second baseman as anybody in the league.
Oh, yeah.
I really believe that McClain, when I saw him play last year, I'm thinking, well, he's the kind of guy that you can put it at a position, whether it's third, short, or second. You put him there and you can forget about it for the next 10 years because he's that good and that solid. But in the meantime, you had a guy that 2 years ago, he won the Rookie of the Year.
Right.
And he's the heart and soul of the ball club. And he's just all in emotionally. You subtract that from your roster, you've got a void.
Yep.
So who's going to fill that void? And this is why it's so difficult to be a front office decision maker because, there are no clear answers to some of these questions.
Well, I got a good person good player to compare him to, not in the way they played or anything, but leadership. Greg Vaughn on the 99 team. He was the leader of that team. He was only here for 1 year and he left. And I think this team lost something. I mean, I know 2000 we needed starting pitching. We didn't have enough starting pitching, but I think the loss of Greg Vaughn was bigger than I think even the Reds management thought at the time. And that's kind of where I'm at with India. I'm like, I can see them trading him, but I'm kind of like, this is a young team. He's the leader, and that's pretty freaking important. I mean, is Greg Vaughn a pretty good comparison, you think, there to Jonathan India as far as leadership goes?
I think it's a really good comparison. But if you go back even a little bit further than that, one step back when they acquired Greg Vaughn, they didn't acquire him for his leadership. They acquired him because they thought he was going to hit 40 home runs.
Right.
The leadership was something that came along with that plus Greg Vaughn's offensive production, gave you what you needed, but you didn't realize you needed the leadership at the time you signed Greg Vaughn.
Right.
When it comes to Jonathan India, I think leadership is one of the main things you're thinking about. And that's why it's so difficult. The other part of it, that Jeff, that I think is interesting is that I remember talking to Lou Piniella after they won the World Series in 1990. This was a couple of years after they won, and they celebrate in Cincinnati. They bring the 1990 team back a few years ago. We're talking about all the guys and what a great group of guys and how great they were, what a team they had, and so on. I asked Lou Piniella, is there anything that you would have done different after that 1990 season? And he immediately said, without even hesitation, I would have turned the roster over more.
Wow, really?
We brought the same guys back.
We did.
Expecting them to be better the next year, to be as healthy as they were in 90, to be as productive as they were. And it just doesn't work like that. We needed new blood. We needed infusion of either veterans or some young players to give you a different perspective, to get wrapped up in the energy all over again. And I think that's the one thing that can happen when you're in a situation like, the Reds or the, winning team like the Texas Rangers or even the Arizona Diamondbacks, going back to them again, is that you have a tendency to say, we're automatically going to be better next year because you're a year better, right?
Right.
And it doesn't always happen like that. I think that there's some value to hearing a guy like Lou Piniella saying, I wish we turned the roster a little bit because we lacked what we had on edge, what we had in 1990 when we went in and played in 1991.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense as being a Bengals fan this year and everybody wondering, before Joe Burrow got hurt, why are we still up and down? But I mean, your point right there, we had basically the exact same team, the exact same coaching staff, and we expected to have the exact same results. And
Yeah.
and this is before Burrow got hurt. We weren't. So I mean, that makes complete sense. So what you're saying for that? Do they? I guess almost grown complacent, or just we've been here, done that. We know how to do it, and it's just going to click in. And sometimes it just doesn't, right?
It's not a perfect science.
Yeah.
That's the other part. This is why it's so difficult to. It's easy to be a second guesser, but it's so difficult to be in the chair of the general manager and make these decisions, because the in the Reds situation, they've got basically too many players for the positions that they have available. So they've got to figure out which of the players on their team other teams like more than they like.
Right.
And that's where the tough thing is. But you can't operate in under a veil of fear.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be afraid of, what if we trade Jonathan India and Christian Encarnacion Strand, and they both end up on the All-Star team next year?
Right.
We're going to look terrible, because everything the Reds have done over the last few years is they traded veterans and they get these players in return, the young players, and the young players have turned out. I mean, all of the ones, even the players that they didn't expect to be that good. Will Benson is a great example.
Will he be bad?
Yeah, so he's all of a sudden like a main cog in this organization, where a year ago at this time you didn't even know his name.
Right.
So it's very difficult, and I'm kind of glad in a way that I never have to make those decisions. Although I don't have to worry about it because they never ask me anyway.
Well, I'm with you. You and me both. That's for Nick Crawl. I'm glad he's got to do that. All right, we got a question for Robert. He said, Chris, is there any quality stars available that the Reds could sign, in your opinion?
I think you've got to go with no. My quick answer is yes. Are there some quality starters to sign? I guess there are. To be honest with you, I haven't gone through this free agent signing list as thoroughly as probably he has, and I appreciate the question. But again, I go back to the fact that the game of baseball nowadays is a game of bullpens. Mm-hmm. And the one reason David Bell's team did so well last year is that he managed a bullpen pretty doggone well. I mean, he was as good as they come, knowing that who's available and how many guys were really going after it, and were making themselves available. And coach, I'll give you two batters tonight, or three batters, that kind of thing. You need arms. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. Your starter is going 5 innings, and if you're getting down, not only in the postseason, but you're getting down the stretch, and it's a must-win game or a must-win series, that guy, if he goes 5 innings, you're patting him on the back saying, thank you very much. Now we're going to the bullpen. Right. I'm of the belief, let's fortify the bullpen with the absolutely best arms you can get, so that it gives David Bell the weapons he needs to get through the 9th inning.
Which is true. That's even more true in the playoffs. Because the playoffs, you got to, and this is one thing that I think noticed, especially since they expanded the playoff. I'm gonna show my age again. I remember when you had to win your division, the West, and that's all you had, 2 East and West, and that was it. Then you went and played the American League in the World Series. But with the expansion of the playoffs, I think it's really changed a lot of the way. There's a way to manage in the regular season, and there's a way to manage in the postseason. It seems like that the managers who have a quicker hook to hurry up and get that stop that momentum, or keep that momentum, change the pitchers in and out faster. And it seems like the teams that have the best bullpens are the ones that go the farthest in the playoffs. Am I off base on that?
No, I think you're right on it about that. But I think nowadays that you're managing more during the regular season, similar to playoff baseball, than ever before, because you're implementing so many different pieces of your bullpen each week compared to what you did 10, 20, or even 30 years ago, when you used to just leave a guy out there.
Right.
And you don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. You leave a guy out there to eat up a bunch of innings, and then meanwhile he gets tagged with 8 earned runs. His agent is on the phone to you. You're like, hey, what are you doing leaving that guy out there? He gave up 8 earned runs. He's going to be a free agent in 2 years. You're ruining his arbitration. We're not, he needs 2 days off between the time he pitches and so on. You got all these things that are happening behind the scenes that never happened before.
Right.
And I think that really complicates things. But You need a good bullpen. You need a shutdown bullpen, and you need healthy, fresh arms all season long. And I think that, you say that you manage differently in the postseason. Well, if your pennant chase comes down to one game like it did for the Reds, I mean,
Right.
it came down to the last weekend of the year.
Yep.
If they're able to beat the St. Louis Cardinals, it's a different deal.
Mm-hmm.
The Diamondbacks don't even get into the postseason. And so maybe you have to manage games in April and May so that you win that game instead of losing that game, because at some point down the road, you've got to make up that loss somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And health is a big thing. And that's I was telling my son this the other day. 2012, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2012, I think all 5 of our starters made every single start. Am I correct on that in 2012?
You're right about that, yeah.
Yeah. We'll probably never see that again. Now, this year, we were lucky if we had one of them make every single start, which we did. Nobody made every single start this year. And that, hurt the Reds down the stretch, of David Bell taxing the bullpen. The bullpen was just wore out. The pitchers were wore out because a lot of them had never pitched that long before because they're young batter or young players. So, I've tried to explain this to my son. Like, how do you get Major League ready to be able to extend innings? And I think Cowboy said this before, that the adrenaline is different in the major leagues. The batters are obviously better in major leagues, so it puts more taxing throws on your arm and your body. And I think more it comes down to conditioning and stuff. Getting to be able to pitch into August and September like you pitched in April. Is that correct on that?
Well, there's a lot of that is correct, yeah. But at the same time, it does help for you to have some guys in the bullpen that have rubber arms.
Right.
And the problem with the bullpen pitchers that they're developing nowadays, they're basically all out of the same mold, right? They all throw high 90s with a hard slider.
Right.
And then I'm watching the postseason, I'm watching the World Series, and I'm watching these guys out of the bullpen. They're throwing sidearm, they're throwing sweepers, they're changing speeds, and they're still getting hitters out. And I think that that is on its way back, but it's going to take a while for the analysts in the organizations to accept that there's another way to get hitters out besides overpowering them.
Shocking.
Because right now, overpowering a hitter is black and white the successful way to get it done, period.
Right.
But when you start factoring in the limited number of innings that those pitchers have, the number of injuries that they sustain, all of that, it takes a leap of faith on the part of an organization and a manager to say, you know what, I want this funky dude down there that only throws 88 with a quirky breaking ball.
We want the Chris Welsh should come out of the bullpen. We want that guy.
You want that kind of a guy,
Right.
And because I think that you need that rubber arm.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody you bring in has to be Powder River.
Right.
And when you do that, it's like I say, it's a difficult thing to put your finger on because we're still in a transition. But I think that there is more opportunity now, and you're going to see it more and more where pitchers are going to start throwing sidearm.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to start coming up with weird and different pitches because I think that organizations realize, hey, we got a whole minor leagues full of these young pitchers that were good enough for us to sign, but they're just a little bit short on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if we change them a little bit, and this is where all the analytics tools can help them, the Edutronic cameras, and then the machines that give you spin rates and so on. They're going to help them develop pitches that hitters can't hit. And I think that, the Reds are on top of that, obviously, but you're going to see more and more spinning stuff up there because that's right now is what getting hitters out. They turn around 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. If it's right down the middle, they're going to hit it. They're major league hitters.
You better believe it.
They may say we need to bring back guys like Kent DeColby throwing it from way down on the radio.
You know what? I think there's some validity to that. I really do.
It changes their eyesight. That's the thing is instead of coming out here all the time, if you throw it from down here, it changes the batter's eyesight. That's what you want to try and do, change something.
You do want to change something, and it's something that they never practice in batting practice either.
Right. Exactly. All right. Royal Frustrary's got a question here. I said, so I've missed part of this conversation, but why exactly is Trevor Bauer not being looked at by the Reds? I've been asked that a lot of times. I'll just tell you about I'm for trying to see if he has anything to prove it deal. I mean, he's our only Cy Young Award winner. What's your thoughts on? I mean, Cross basically came out and said they're not going to. So
I think that I've not talked to Nick Kroll specifically about Trevor Bauer. I think from a pitching standpoint, if you break him down baseball wise, he's probably an upgrade to what you may have in your organization as far as right-handed starters. Certainly, what he showed when he was with the Reds, the guy can still pitch. But one of the things that the Reds are really trying to protect is the chemistry in that clubhouse, the way the team feels about itself and about its teammates. And they've got to be very careful as to who they bring into the organization and into that clubhouse. And I think that maybe they don't feel that Trevor Bauer is the right mix. And, that's a decision that the front office has to make. That's the only thing that I can think of is that, from a clubhouse standpoint, he's not as good a fit as maybe somebody else is.
All right. I got it's more of a comment here from Tim. He said, "Hey, Chris, are you still doing Reds baseball and Valley Sports in 2024? Happy holidays to you and your family from me and Cincinnati Reds fan from Northeast Ohio who loves the Cincinnati Reds." So,
well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching, number one. And number two, we're going to be on Bally's. As far as I know, I don't know. Hey, listen. I talked to everybody I could when I was in Cincinnati this last weekend during the Reds Fest. And basically nobody knows anything about the situation with Bally's because it hasn't been finalized yet. So we're all going under the assumption that we're going to be on Bally's, that you're going to be able to find the Reds games in the same spot you have always. And if something changes, it'll change and probably, without notice. So I'm going along with it that I'm going to be back. Jeff, I tease people about the fact that, I used to be a starter as a broadcaster. Now I've gotten old and now I'm like a utility infielder. So I move around from radio to TV to pre and post game. I love it. I love the people I work with. And I think as far as we know right now, we're going to be same spot, same station, same time.
Yeah, you do everything now. You used to be you and George Grant. Now you're on TV. You do radio. You do a post game and everything. Which, by the way, I give you props. You've been getting a lot better on radio. Which radio is hard to describe the play. It is not easy to go from a color analyst to a play-by-play guy. And that's what they asked you to do. And I think you've gotten a lot better at it. And I enjoy listening to you on 700 when you're on there. Especially, I miss you and Marty. I like the back and forth that you guys had.
Well, we get along great. Marty does. And I'll tell you, of all the broadcasters that I've had a chance to work with, I mean, with the Reds, being able to work with George Grant and Marty Brenneman, I mean, really, it doesn't get much better than that. Now, I did a lot of like the third tier games for Fox Sports on Saturdays when they had national games. I worked with a lot of other broadcasters, some really good ones along the way, but. Reds fans have been spoiled, with Marty and Joe and then George Grant coming in. And I feel like I'm just hanging on, with the ground that they prepared. And it's been a pleasure, certainly. Thank you for saying that about my play-by-play. I still don't think I'm a very good play-by-play guy. I'm just trying to get by. All I have to do is cover 2 innings. And I really hope that it's not a long inning
Right.
where there's a bunch of crazy stuff that happens because – what you find out as a novice play-by-play guy is, number one, you have a hard time maintaining your scorebook at the same time you're calling the game. So all of a sudden you have 3 hitters in a row and they all hit the first pitch. And now there's a quirky play. There's a pitching change and so on. Then you go into break and you're trying to catch up. You bring somebody else in and now, something else crazy happens. And you're not caught up in your scoreboard yet. So now in your scorecard, you're trying to go back and say, well, what happened in that inning?
Right.
And I sometimes have to wait to the break. I look over at Tommy Thrall and say, what the heck happened there anyway? So, that's kind of the way it goes. But
yeah,
I am willing to admit that I got a lot to learn when it comes to play-by-play.
Hey, like I said, it's not easy. I've never done it on the radio, but when I was trying to get into radio back in the day, I would practice watching the Reds game and try and do it. I'm like, holy crap, this is hard to try to do that just to be able to get the words out because you're painting a picture of what's happening. And then, like you said, you got to keep track of the game. And then you're trying to be entertaining and maybe having a conversation with Tommy Thrall or something. That's why Marty Brennan was the best. I mean, it still is the best. I mean, I don't know how. And Tommy Thrall does a great job. I mean, I really, I give him props because it's not easy to replace a legend. I mean, I was always taught in broadcasting schools, you don't want to be the guy to replace a legend because they're most likely not going to like you. But I think Tommy Thrall has done a pretty darn good job, and not replacing Marty. Nobody's ever going to replace him, but holding his place or whatever, however you want to put it. I think Tommy's done a great job.
I think that the important thing, when you're doing play-by-play, especially, is to be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. And the best advice I ever heard was from Vin Scully, and Vin was so nice to me. I mean, here I was a converted ball player, really not even that good of a player. I'm hanging around long enough to get a job as a broadcaster. And I come in there at Dodger Stadium. I meet Vin Scully for the very first time. And I walk into his booth to say hi. And he greets me with my name. I'm thinking, gosh, Vin Scully, knows me, remembers me, which, he may have had to look me up, as I was coming up the stairs for all I know. But the advice that he gave me is that when you do play-by-play is make believe you're talking to one person on the other side of the mic. Make believe you got your aunt or your uncle or your next door neighbor there, and you're just describing the game to that person. And I think for me, that's something that I always try to remind myself to do, because I think it gives you a little bit more, you humanize your broadcast a little bit more. You don't put your radio voice on and do all this kind of stuff. You just be yourself.
Right.
And I think Reds fans, they know the game well enough that you don't have to be something that you're really not. And by the way, I also love working with John Sadak.
Yes. I love Sadak.
John has come in here under tough circumstances, and he's done a super job. He's won the fan base over. This guy's a hard worker, man. I mean, this guy might be the hardest working guy in sports right now. He's all over doing basketball, football, radio. He does a lot of stuff and he's on every little bit of social media you ever saw. And to this day, including my kids who are pretty good at this, I have never been around somebody who can look something up on Google faster than John Sadak. I mean, this guy is a wizard. I can't even get the thing to load up, and he's already got the answer. So, I love it.
I love Sadak. I've been trying really hard to get him on my podcast, and during the season, they try to do it after the season, and then I messaged him again. He goes, I got baseball, or I got basketball, I got this. I'm like, all right. So I'm hoping to get him on sometime. But the call that he had of Ellie De La Cruz's first home run, I think it was the first one, or the one he hit the right fielder, he almost hit it out of stadium. That ball had a family, which I didn't hear it at first because I'm too busy jumping up and down and cheering myself. But when they played it on later on, I cracked up laughing. It's just the way his inflection and Ellie's got a cycle and how he gets excited about it and everything, and his Star Wars quirky things, and just I don't know. I love Sadak. I think he's been a great addition to the Reds broadcast. I mean, he's like I said, there's not too many people that I know don't like him.
Well, that's good, because he's a super guy, and he works very hard at it, and I think he's got some talent, and I really love sitting in there with him because he fills in the stuff that I have no clue about. I mean, he'll make all these references, pop culture, and they will go completely over my head. I mean, and it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm not offensive. No offense.
I get some. I get some.
I'm thinking, oh yeah, well, I just missed something else. Now I look on Twitter and say, sure enough, that old white-haired dude in the booth has got no clue. But we're having a good time.
That's what happens to me. He'll say something. I'll get some of them, but another time, if I'm watching a game, my son he'll start cracking up laughing, going, "What?" And he'll look it up, and he'll show me. I'm like, "Oh, okay." I don't know what you're talking about. Like, all right. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, this is a crazy stat. Ruthless Sherry had here. He said, "Here's a crazy stat. Every team that beat the Milwaukee Brewers in the playoffs have made it to the World Series." I think that's an interesting stat. That just tells you if you play the Brewers, you got to beat them in the World Series, or beat them in the playoffs, and you automatically go to the World Series, I guess.
Well, you beat good pitching.
That was the thing, and that's what got us with Milwaukee is their pitching. That's why we couldn't beat them.
Yeah, it's going to be a different deal for Milwaukee this year. They may not be as good. They lost a lot of players. They lost their manager, obviously.
How shocked were you by that? that he left and went to the Cubs?
Uh,
I mean, it's a lot of money. I understand.
I actually thought he was going to retire. I actually thought that he was going to hang it up for a few years until his kids got out of college. He's got a couple of kids, I think, that play baseball, and he wanted to watch them play and so on. But living that close to Chicago and being around as long as Counsell has been around, he understands what a huge market and opportunity that is. And I'm sure that they waved enough cash in front of his face that he had a hard time saying no. So, that was it. Now, whether he's going to be able to do what he did in Chicago, they did in Milwaukee, I have no idea. I know he's a good manager, and I've gotten to know him very well over the years, and I respect him quite a bit. But I think that the Cubs, that they've got some money to spend. They're going to get better. I think that in this division, obviously the Cardinals are spending like, crazy.
They got Sonny Gray.
The Pirates are going to be better because they're kind of in a situation like the Reds. They got a lot of young players that they're expecting to make a leap next year. And hey, it's just because you had a great year last year doesn't automatically mean you're going to be in game 161 with still a shot, in 2024. But I think the Reds are certainly positioned to be in a good spot.
Yeah, that's where I'm still waiting for them. Like the general managers meeting is going on. It's this week, right? Or is it next week? The GM meetings, they're this week, right?
It's this week, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's where I'm kind of hoping that something will come out of this, so the Reds get a starting pitcher or an outfielder. But I know they got to add some stuff. I still think they're going to, and I'm pretty, I won't say confident, but I think the Reds are definitely going to be in contention for the NL Central for sure this year.
Oh, I think there's no doubt about that. I think that they got a great lineup, and it's a diverse type of a lineup that is different. So if I'm an opposing pitcher, I look at a lineup the way I would pitch to them. I'm thinking, man, these guys are all a little bit different, and which makes it tough on a pitcher, wears them out when you do that.
Yep.
But at the same time, you got to win those tight ball games, and you got to come to be ready to play every day. So it's a challenge again, to eliminate the one thing about the Reds not having an ace in their rotation. And they've got guys with potential ace stuff. I mean, you look at the stuff that Hunter Green has, you're thinking, God, sometimes he goes out there and I don't even know how they even put the bat on the ball.
Right.
Andrew Abbott went out there and made it look very easy. There were times when Williamson and Lodolo, when he's healthy, and Graham Ashcraft have all been outstanding. And then you start talking about some of the young players like Phillips and so on that can even be better next year. Yeah. But the one thing that you want to make sure that you have in your rotation is that guy that stops the losing streak, that can give you 5 or 6 shutout innings.
A Jose Rio.
Yeah. I mean, and this is why guys like Scherzer and DeGrom and so on make so much money, is because they're stoppers, and there's an important place for them in baseball.
Exactly. Rufus Cherry, another question here. He said, what is the latest on Justin Dunn, and how can he fit on the Reds team in 2024?
I thought they non-tender Justin?
I honestly don't know. To be honest,
I want to say without looking, and I don't know if he's coming to camp with the Reds or whether he's a free agent. I mean, forgive me for not knowing.
I don't know either, to be honest.
I did get to know Justin Dunn, not really well, but pretty well. I mean, and he was rehabbing a lot. It's got to be so frustrating for him. I mean, he's put 2 years in, and he's hardly pitched at all in the major leagues. And he went from an elbow injury, I think, to a shoulder injury, and those can be problematic. He's a good kid. He works hard, and but he falls in the same category of a lot of guys. I mean, there are a lot of pitchers that have the stuff that Justin Dunn has. The question is, can you take that and you make yourself into a pitcher that can get hitters out? I mean, what's the difference between Justin Bubb and and Shane Bieber, for instance? Right. I mean, Bieber took that breaking ball of his and his command, and he became a Cy Young Award pitcher. Anybody who throws at that level can do that. You don't have to throw 99. You don't have to throw 104. You have to take what you have, and you have to hone it to the point where you're going to get the most out of yourself.
Right.
And that's where the great pitchers are able to do that, and the great players can do that. I mean, there are a lot of guys that have better talent than Joey Votto. Look at the kind of career that he's put together.
We're gonna miss him. I'm not looking forward to seeing him in another uniform. The only one that would be okay is if he's in a Blue Jays uniform because that's his hometown team. Other than that, I don't want to see him in anybody's uniform. To be honest, I'm gonna miss him. It was a pleasure watching him work. And I felt so bad for him because he was on so many bad teams. It's just like he finally got on we had a really good run last year, and he had points where he was looking like the old Joey Votto, but he really concentrated on trying to hit homers this year. That was where he changed his swing and everything. That was one thing about Votto is it seemed like whatever he wanted to do, all right, I'm going to take a whole bunch of walks this year. He did. Okay, I'm going to, up my batting average this year, or I'm going to hit the opposite field this year, or I'm going to hit for more power or whatever. Whatever he put his mind to, he could do, which I think is unbelievable. I don't know if I've ever seen a batter be able to do that. I won't say as easily because it wasn't easy, but he made it look easy.
Well, he made it look easy because he worked so hard. I mean, he was one of the hardest workers I've ever seen in a Reds uniform, and the guy was tireless, and he was a student of the game, and he did all the things behind the scenes that a lot of guys just wear out trying to do, and they couldn't even keep up with
It's
Votto.
monotonous.
But what Votto and his long career shows you at the end of his career that this is a young man's game.
Yeah.
What people don't understand sometimes is that as you get older, your reflexes aren't as quick, your eyesight is not as good, and you combine that with the fact that the speed of the game in baseball has gotten faster every year since Joey Votto was signed, that he can't wait back and foul a ball off intentionally like he used to.
Right.
And that's why you saw him, jumping it off speed pitches, and because he's looking for fastballs and so on. This is an unkind game to old players, period. It is for old pitchers, look at what happened, Scherzer and so on. This is a young man's game. These athletes are honed as top-notch, world-class athletes more than ever before. It used to be that you could play baseball. You didn't have to do anything in the wintertime. You just show up in spring training, get yourself in shape. Now these guys are working out. They've got private, trainers that they work with all winter long. They've got, a program that has been set up for them by the ball club. They've got the ball club's conditioning guy checking in on them several times a year, making sure what they need to do what they do. And it used to be, that I go out and pitch a couple of games, I get hit around a little bit. They say, hey, you need to, locate your pitches better. Now they're telling you, hey, not only do you need to locate your pitches better, but your hips are a little bit tight and you're not striding quite as far, and your front shoulder is pointed 2 inches open at the time your foot lands and so on. So it's much more technical now than ever before, and it's a lot harder to be a baseball player as an older player now because of the speed of the game.
Exactly. Now, one more question, and I'll get you out of here, and I appreciate your time. But this minor league system that the Cincinnati Reds have right now, in my lifetime, probably yours too, but I'll get your question on this, is the most loaded that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I've never seen the Reds have this many guys, and I don't know if we've ever had 5 guys come up and perform like these 5 rookies we had last year. Is it the most loaded minor league system that you've ever seen for the Reds? That they just got all these guys. This first wave came up, we got another wave coming up, and another wave behind that. I mean, it's awesome.
It is awesome, and it gives the front office a lot of options. But this is where, again, as we touched on earlier, Jeff, this is the tough thing, is to figure out which of these players other teams like more than what you like them.
Yep.
And if they like them more, then you're going to be able to trade them for something that fits your puzzle. You're trying to make your roster. It's always like a puzzle, and it's changing. I need this position. I need this position filled. I need this guy, and so on. And having 40 really good minor leaguers, all that does is give you opportunity to trade for something that you need.
And that's what
determine in that of all those players which ones are keepers and which ones that you're willing to move on. And it gets really tough. And this is why it's good having a farm system, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to get to the playoffs.
No,
Your guys in the major leagues have to produce. And this is what's so interesting about the game of baseball.
That's what's going to be so interesting about this offseason. I'm glad it's Nick Krall. And by the way, I love the picture you put. I don't remember what game it was or what. You had a picture of you when you had the old the mustache and you and Nick Krall when he was like a bat boy or something. I don't remember. That was a young Nick Krall. I'm like, holy crap. I didn't know Nick had been in the organization that long.
Well, Nick came over. We were back in Synergy Field when he first came over, and he was I don't know what date it was and so on, but it was early, probably in the 90s sometime, I think. Anyway, Nick would come over, and he was in charge of putting together some scatter reports and so on. And I was really happy. I'm really happy with me right now because I was very good to Nick. Because, it comes under the category of, you never know what these young guys are, when they're going to end up being your boss.
Right.
And, but Nick has always been a really good student of baseball. He always has his ears open, and he listens, and he thoughtfully, goes through what the other people are telling him. So he's never come across to me like a guy that he thinks he knows everything.
Right.
And he's not afraid to admit that he's wrong. I mean, he's made some mistakes, as a general manager in this organization over the last few years. And he's not afraid to say, hey, I was a mistake doing this. I wish I had not done this. That's the way you learn, and that's the way you move forward. I think he's a good person. I think that he has a plan, that he's got some really good help with him. Brad Metter, I think, is a really good baseball mind, and he's a good balance for Nick. I think that Nick uses enough analytics to keep himself on edge, but I think that there's also some figuring out what the human side of baseball is too, because when you get at that level, everybody has the same statistics and data. Everybody is taking the same stuff out of a ball game that the Reds analysts are.
Right.
It's who can compile that and combine it with the human element and to put a winner on the field. And I think they did a good job last year, and I'm knocking on wood and I'm crossing my fingers. I'm pretty confident that they're going to be able to do it again this year.
Yeah, me too. And like I said, Nick Krall, I felt so bad when we finally got his shot. It felt like, here, Nick, here's a big pile of crap. Go do something with it. And I mean, in 2 years, he's done something with it, and it's turned out really, really well. So I'm excited for that. Chris, you've been on for almost an hour. I appreciate it. It was awesome actually physically meeting you in person this past weekend. I know you got your website and everything. Go ahead, plug anything you want before I let you go.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, Jeff. I always like to plug it because it's still rolling right along. In fact, we're making some big strides this winter on it. It's called baseballrulesacademy.com. If you just type in baseball rules or type in a question about rules, you want to know about runner interference or obstruction or umpire interference or anything like that, a balk, we'll come up on the front page of Google on that. It's free, totally free. Although once you use up, I think 10 posts or videos per month, it is behind a paywall for premium. So if you want to get that, we are putting together an umpire whole online course this year in the winter time. So it's
some of the umpires need that, I think.
Yeah, I think not only that, I think the big league umpires certainly, they don't know everything. So it's good to have a little reference book there. But it's also what I'm trying to do is help youth baseball have enough umpires.
Right.
It's hard to find coaches. It's hard to find enough players sometimes, and it's really hard to find umpires because nowadays you're subject to all sorts of abuse and so on. I just want to equip young umpires, older umpires, Uncle Jeff like yourself, to go umpire, your kids' games or maybe your nephew's games or your neighbor's games, just with enough information to make it look like you know what you're doing and that you have a pretty good idea of what the game of baseball is all about. And I got into this baseball rules thing a long time ago, Jeff, because I thought I knew as a former player. I played for 10 years, major leagues and minors together, plus college, plus, summer balls and so on. I thought I knew the rules, but there was a couple of quirky plays that came up I didn't know the rules to. So I said, you know what? I'm never going to be embarrassed on the air again,
There you go.
and tell people I don't know what I'm talking about. So I made it a point to learn the rules. I think broadcasters should learn the rules. I've got almost every broadcaster in baseball as a subscriber on my website, and hey, I think it's also kind of fun. You look at a crazy play, and if you think, man, if the players on your team, and this is the argument that I make to some general managers, if the players on your team, if you're ranking everybody according to WAR, and you're saying that guy's a 1-win player, that guy's a 2-win player, that guy's a 3-win player, and so on. What if you win 1 or 2 games a year because your team knows the rules better than the other team?
Right.
And it's
Exactly.
something that they've never thought of before. It's also something that really doesn't compute because they don't know the rules themselves. But you and I do, because I know that you use the website, baseballrulesacademy.com. Thanks for letting me plug it.
Hey, no problem, Chris. I appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait. About 2 months, we'll be having pitchers and catchers report. You guys will be out there in Arizona. Hopefully on Valley Sports, but you'll be on somewhere. So we'll be broadcasting the Reds game, and I know you'll be there. But again, I appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely have to do this again. Tell Tommy Thrall or somebody. Oh, I know one thing I would say real quick. When I saw you there, the funniest thing was after I got to talk to you, Graham Ashcraft was standing next to you. And I was like, hey, Graham, how you doing? I introduced myself, and I got his email. Hopefully he'll come on my show too. And I said, I'm Jeff. I do a podcast, Sports Strawberry Ice. He goes, hey, dude, I'm Graham. I go, I'm like, I know who you are. He goes, I'm always going to introduce myself as that. And I found that refreshing that I'm Graham. How you doing? Like I knew who you were, but it just that I thought that was refreshing that he said he's always going to do that, introduce himself as Graham. Like, I'm not anybody big or anything like that. He's not assuming everybody knows him. I just thought that was kind of interesting of Graham and how
you can say that about almost everybody in that ball club.
Mm-hmm.
They are down to earth. They don't take anything for granted. Ashcraft is a guy that'll run through a brick wall for you. This guy I am so impressed with his competitive nature. I love the guy. And you can say this for everybody.
Right.
Abbott, Lodolo, everybody, they all feel the same. And I think we're really lucky right now, Jeff, to be Reds fans, because this is a good group. It doesn't come along that often. I've been around this my 32nd year coming up doing Reds baseball, and this is the most fired up I've been about the Reds team in a long time. So I hope I see you out the ballpark.
You absolutely will. And I always, I promise I'm going to let you go after this. We keep bringing stuff up, and it triggers memories for me. My son brought this up. He goes, yeah, Chris has been on like for forever. I said, yeah, him and George Grant started in 1991, the year after we won the World Series. He goes, how do you know that? I said, I just remember it because Johnny Bench and Tommy Hume did it the year before that in 1990, and I was a big Johnny Bench fan. And I remembered you. I didn't know who George Grant was, to be honest. But I do miss that combination, you and George Grant. Is there any chance that George might come back? Because I know he used to and broadcast a game with you.
Well, I'd love to work with George again. I think he's retired. He's doing a lot of things with USA Baseball. Mm-hmm. He's still involved in the game. If I really want to find out what's going on inside MLB, I call George because he knows everybody. And those were 17 years that they went by in a flash. I love the guy, and there are so many people that sound exactly like you do, Jeff, when it comes to George. But of all the guys I work with, I love every one of them. I get to work with Cowboy. I get to work with Tommy Thrall, Jim Day, Sadak, Sam LeCure, Annie Sabo.
Yep.
I'm the luckiest of all of them because I've survived a long time, and I've got as good a crew as I've ever had before.
Yeah, I had Annie on here, and I told her her dad, Chris, was my favorite player growing up. So I got this bobblehead. He's always on there. So Annie's going to come on sometime soon. So hopefully she'll see the bobblehead. I got Sabo there, and I got Sabo there. I got a whole bunch of Sabo stuff. Anyway, we've been talking long enough. I can keep talking your ear off, Chris. I appreciate you coming on, and like I said, we'll have to get you on again sometime. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Hey, good visiting with you. Thanks a lot for the time. Take care.
Yep. You too. See ya. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Like I said, I can sit there and talk to Chris for another hour or more. But I gotta get off here because I got another hour, and then, actually about a half hour, we're gonna do the other show. So I gotta get off here and start doing that. So let me real quickly get to the Facebook groups that let me live stream. And as always, I appreciate every single one of them. They are Who Dey Nation, Who Dey Legion, Bearcat Ruckus, Radical Reds, the Ohio State Buck, that's the Ice Bar. And then, of course, you can follow me on all my social media platforms, all under Sports with Strawberry Ice, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads. Twitter handle is at Jeff A. Triniple. TikTok is at Iceman90. Facebook, Instagram, and Threads are under Sports with Strawberry Ice. I should be pulling off sound later tonight. Put on the podcast on Beanpod, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher Play, pretty much wherever you get your podcast. Please make sure you rate, like, and review. YouTubers, 2,442 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Make sure you hit the likes, hit the subs, all that stuff. Help me out. And maybe they'll let me be monetized again sometime soon. Anyway, other than that, I'll see you here in a less than a half hour. We're going to be doing a recap show for the Bengals-Jaguars game. That's just sports, baby. See ya!